Terry. I'm here at SoCo, and today we're going to do a sew along for our new dress pattern that we have coming out at Open Studio Patterns. We made Libby's out of this sweet linen wool blend. It's a great fabric to do this out of. We've got lots of options for fabrics. We're going to be using an industrial straight stitch machine, and then we're using an overlock to finish most of the seams, but we are going to show you how to do a bias facing around the armhole. So yeah. So the first thing you're going to need to do is cut out all your pieces. We have these here. You've got 2 fronts, 2 backs, 2 pockets, a neck piece, and then here is your bias that you're going to use for the armholes. Basic tools, you're going to use a big ruler. You'll also use snips, seam ripper, marking pens. I like a small ruler by the machine. These are kind of basic tools you're going to need for this dress. And then the first step is going to be matching up your side seams. So this dress kind of goes a little bit differently than some others because we're going to flat the pocket there on your side seam, and it's just easier to work with if you do that first and then add the pocket, and then we go back and do the front and back center seams. So here I have the dress on the machine and just doing a 3/8 inch seam allowance all the way down both the front back side seams on both sides. Next, we're going to clean finish the side seam. So I'm just going to do this with an overlock machine. You know, you could do binding. If you want to do a French seam here, you could. This is just the easiest, kind of nicest, quickest finish that I like to do. So that's what's happening with the side seam. After that, we give a nice press. We want to get that really nice and flat. I usually press from the inside, pushing your seam allowance to one side, and then I'll flip it over and give a little press on the front side too. You know, you want to make sure your iron's at the right temperature for this, not too hot. Just a quick little press. And then the next thing that I go into is pressing the pockets. So I start with a turn back of 3/8 inch. This is marked on your pattern piece as a notch, so that first turn back is at the notch, and then there is a notch for your second turn back to make your pocket hem. So that's what I'll do next here, and I'll press both of the hems of my pockets before I sew them. Now you got 2 pockets ready to stitch on the machine. If you wanted to, depending on your fabric, if you have no right side or wrong side, you could have this hem actually on the outside of your garment. So you see this hem. Sometimes I really like to do that on pockets, or a lot of times on pockets, but sometimes on certain types of top stitching, you can do those hems to the outside, and it looks really nice. It gives a little dimension. I opted to not do this on the dress, but you could do this, and it looks really nice. So you can see here, you know, you don't see me pinning a lot. I did use the iron to like hold this kind of for me, and so then I don't have to fidget with pins so much. This is how we do in industrial sewing, so it's kind of the tricks I'm showing you. Feel free to use pins wherever you might need to, just to make it a little easier on you. But I do think it is good practice to, at some point, get used to not using pins, because I think you'll find that you'll like it. So the next thing we're going to do is clean finish this pocket. These are going to get topped right on the dress, and so this fabric, you know, does fray a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and clean finish it. It also helps, you know, having this serged edge actually helps with a nice fold line when you're top stitching something on. So it just helps you when you're at the iron and you're pressing something, you've got those stitches there to give it a little bit of weight to this fabric. It's pretty thin, so sometimes I like having that, and also gives something for the stitches to kind of sit into, make it a little sturdier. I'm going to go around and I'm just going to press this down all the way 3/8 of an inch back. So this is the side seams of the dress, and you can see it's still really flat and open, so it's really easy. Those are the drill holes that were on my pattern, and I will place mine, per the pattern. However, this is a spot where if you're petite, if you're a little bit smaller, you might want to move your pockets up a little bit. We definitely saw that with some of the testers on this dress, and that's just normal for petite bodies. So 2 inches could be a good kind of height to move them up. You would just remark those holes 2 inches, or you could go ahead and get this pocket prepped and then just pin it on your body where you like your pockets. So it's pretty adaptable as far as where you like your pockets to sit, where you like your hand to sit in your pockets. This is one of those places where I will use some pins to hold everything in place, just kind of at each corner usually. Sometimes I'll put one right in the middle there of the pocket. It's just easier for me when I'm on the machine just to sit down and start stitching these on versus holding them as I go. This fabric is also a little widgy, so this helps me a little bit to make sure they're nice and straight. So you will do that on both of your panels, and then we'll go to our single needle machine and just top stitch those right on. So I'm just going to start top stitching this pocket on. You want to make sure you get in any of your threads and everything, keep them nice and tidy. Once you get this stitch, it's a little harder to tidy up things. So, you'll stitch down, make sure you put your needle down before you lift your presser foot, and then you pivot around any of those corners. I am pretty close to the edge right now, and I decided on my dress to do a double top stitch here on the pocket. It's not necessarily in our instructions, but a lot of these kinds of things with sewing, you can do what you like. So that's what's really nice. You're making your own decisions as you go. And I tend to like a double top stitch on my pocket just because sometimes I'm a little bit overkill when it comes to sturdiness. So I like pockets that aren't going to rip. And so sometimes that double stitch will help that. And so this first stitch I have coming up pretty close to the edge, you'll see me at times, I'll use my snips, I'll use my seam ripper, I'll use my fingers. Right here I'm doing that. There's a little thread, and so I just want to make sure all those things get tucked in before I continue my stitching. So this will be the second row of stitching that happens on the pocket, and it's about a little less than 1/4 inch away from the first one. It's about the width of that right side of my presser foot. So next we'll do our center front and center back seams. There is a big seam allowance here. It is 1 inch built into the pattern, and that is because we do a really nice clean finishing technique on both of these seams, which you'll see in just a minute. And this allows for us to, a really easy way to do a nice slit up the back of the skirt. You could change that to the front if you'd rather have your slit in the front. So there's a lot of options there. But the first thing we will do is do that really wide seam allowance. So, if you need to put a piece of tape on your machine there for that seam allowance, if it doesn't go that far, most, home machines will have an inch measurement there on your plate. But if you need to put a piece of tape down, sometimes that's what I'll do when I have an extreme seam allowance. So that's a good trick to utilize sometimes. So I'm going to stitch both the front and the back center seams. If you paid attention to your pattern, then you should know here that I should have stopped. So mistakes happen all the time in sewing. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. I forgot to stop actually my stitches there where my slit is of my back. So I will show you the trick, what I ended up doing, because it took me a minute to catch it actually when I had finished top stitching this seam down, which I'll show you in just a little bit. So once those seams are done, then you'll give a good press. You'll actually be at the iron here for a minute. This is going to make your life easier when you go to sew this. So you can use the iron here. First, you're going to open up those seams really nice and flat. And then you're going to fold under each side upon itself. So it'll end up being a 1/2 inch wide. The bottom one is going to be completely covered, your raw edge will be completely covered. It will be folded under, and then this will be a place where you could do top stitching. This is a really nice finish. It's totally clean. It's not crazy hard. It just takes a minute to get it nice and even, and then you're just going to take that to the machine and stitch down both of those lines. And so here you can see me doing the pressing also on the back seam. So here you can get a little bit better view of this seam at the machine. So you can see it finishes at 1/2 inch on either side. And I stitch very close to that edge. I am stitching from the inside of the garment. So I just travel all the way down and try to make a nice consistent straight line here. This is something you are going to see from the sides, from the outside, from the right side. So you want to make it nice and straight as possible. Here I kind of switched it up on you a little bit. I'm doing the shoulder seams, and since I was at the machine, I didn't go show you at the table, but I'm matching up those shoulder seams right sides together. And instead of doing my single needle first, which is usually what I do, I just serged it first instead. I think I happened to be walking by that machine. Not a lot of thought involved there, but here you can see this is me actually doing that 3/8 inch seam allowance, which will be on your shoulder seam. So remember how I forgot to leave my slit? I'm going to take a minute here. This has already been double top stitched down both sides. I'm going to use a ruler to mark up where that original notch line was. So I'm using this pen that I can steam out. You can barely see it. I can barely see it. It's kind of running out. Sewing is not a perfect art form. So you're going to see some mistakes in this video, and that's okay because you always need to also know ways to deal with things that come up. So this is what's happening here. I'm going to stitch actually this line. So this is my stopping line for the slit. So this is the tack where to keep the slit from running up higher. So I do a really nice sturdy stitch here. I will, I think I go across 2 or 3 times, and you can see I just go straight from either top stitching line, and then I will take a minute to use my seam ripper here and take out those stitches, which I should have originally left open. Sorry, I'll get it here where you can actually see what I'm doing. So yeah, I'll use my seam ripper. The ball point, the round ball is on the bottom of the seam ripper here when you use this technique. It will get some little threads everywhere, so that will take a minute to clean up, but it's a pretty fast way to use your seam ripper in a situation like this. Just be really careful to not rip your fabric. So at this point, I'd like to give a nice little press of all those seams that we did, everything we top stitched, including the front, the back seam. This is the slit that I finally got in there. And then also the pocket. I haven't pressed this, pressing from the top once you've top stitched something on just kind of settles it into the fabric a little nicer. Same thing with my shoulder seams here. I'll press these open and towards the back usually. So this is our neckband that's going to go around, and so you can see we're going to stitch one side of those together. That is with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, so that's what that ends up looking like. And then you're going to fold it in half so that all your stitches are hidden and match up those seams, and then it's going to be folded, and we're going to attach this to the body of the dress, matching the center seam, the back seam, and the shoulder seams. I'm going to stitch it together right now, the two edges of it, just it makes it a little easier getting through the machine. You are going to be stitching this on to the neckline. The other thing we want to do here on the body of your dress is stay stitching around the neckline. So this is what we did not do in this video, but we did add this to the instructions because the neck tends to get a little stretched out as you do this. So definitely add some stay stitching both around the neck and the armholes before you go to put on this collar piece. So you can see I've got my notches matched up here, and I will just work my way. I usually work from if you can see, it's pinned, well, it's clipped actually, to the inside of the garment. So I kind of work within that circle. My garment is right sides, in. Wrong side, you can see my seam allowance right there on that shoulder seam. And so that's how I like to work around that circle. And this is sometimes can be a slow process. You definitely do not want to stretch out your neckline at all as you sew this in. It does fit exact, and if it gets stretched out, then you could get some puckers or gathers or some things like that. So just take your time here when you're sewing things around the bias. So after single needling those together, then we'll do a clean finishing technique. Again, I'm going to run it through the serger here, and we'll just go straight along that edge all the way around the neckline to make a nice clean finish. So next we're back at the ironing table, and we're just going to give that a nice press open all along that neckline. Again, sometimes I would use a sleeve board, but a lot of people don't have sleeve boards at home. So usually just make your ironing board work. You kind of work around that curve. It takes a minute. It's a little fidgety. Use the front point of your iron, just the pointy bit sometimes. So you can figure it out. If you can get a sleeve board, it's great for places like this. So there's what your neckline looks like when you're all finished. And then we are going to move on now to the armholes. So the first thing you're going to do is you've got some bias strips, included in your pattern. Bias is a great thing to do for finishing. It's kind of stretchy, kind of pulls in this armhole. This is a deep armhole, so we want to make sure it doesn't, flay out too much. So the binding is a great way to do that. The first thing you're going to do is just press it in half all the way down, and then you will stitch that raw edge to the raw edge of your garment all the way around your armhole. So I like to batch out stuff when I'm at the iron, so I'm going to go ahead and do the hem as well. I'm going to press the hem up again. It's the same way we kind of did the pocket hem. You press up the first 3/8 inch, and then the rest of the seam allowance, which will be marked at a notch. And so this is, I'm going around with the first turn up, and then you'll see me come around with the iron again. And again, I don't pin any of this. That's why I'm ironing it. It'll stay, up there for me as I go to sew at the machine. I am working with a subtle stripe. So this is something when you're hemming. Oh, we got some of my hair there. When you're hemming, you need to pay attention to. You want to keep the stripes lined up on the inside of that hem to make sure it just looks nice. No one may ever see it from the inside, but you will, and it can also affect your hem look on the outside as well. So if you have a stripe, use that as a way to make sure you're staying on grain and that your hem is pinned up or pressed up really nicely. So, all this pressing can take a minute, but it's amazing how much easier it makes when you go to sew sew it, I love using the iron. And I don't use it in my daily life so much, but I use the heck out of it when I'm sewing. So we'll go do these two things together. The first thing I will do is sew up that hem. And since we've got that nice, press line, it's really easy. I just kind of make sure that, like I said, the stripes are staying lined up. Of course, the side seams, any place there's a seam, are staying lined up. And just make sure that is a nice, consistent, straight line. I'm about 1/8 of an inch away from my folded edge. And then when you get to the end, of this slit here, you just want to make sure you don't have stuff poking out of that hem. Sometimes it can shift and push the folded edge past the outer edge. And I just like to make sure that that's not happening at this kind of location. So we're getting in now to the armhole. So as we go to stitch this on, I did leave, I'm sorry you couldn't see it very well, but I left about 1 inch there at the end that was not sewn on. And I'll just start working my way around the armhole. Again, you see those raw edges are all matched up together. So the raw edge of the folded bias is matched up to the raw edge of the armhole. And then I will stop. I'm using my snips here to cut, but you should not. I did it here, but then I came back and used my scissors because it's not a very nice cut. So you'll see here what I do here is for this seam allowance, I actually just use my fingers and kind of press in that little fold line. And that gives me a nice line to cut with my scissors this time, the right side. I did a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You could do a small seam allowance there on this bias. And then we sew it together with just a one little stitch line here, and that's how you finish that bias. We do have a really great tutorial for this online as well in our video tutorials page on YouTube and on our website. You can see another version of this around a neckline, but this is a really nice way to finish, curved necklines, armholes. You can even use this in all kinds of places. So this is a good technique to get proficient with. We really like doing this folded version where you've got it already clean finished on the one side, because what we're going to do in the next go around is stitch that down. So then on the inside of the garment, you'll have a really nice folded piece of bias here. So I do a finger press here. I didn't need to use the iron so much, so I just pressed it open. And then you do have to finish that last little bit of stitching, after you stitch that, so that you could get to it. You left that unstitched, and you just need to make sure that you do stitch that down to your garment there on that last little, inch or two. And then once you've got this all clipped and cleaned up, then what you're going to do is kind of flip it to the inside. And then you are going to top stitch this all the way around. And, you could, if you felt like you needed to go press this at this point, you could. I did not do that because at the machine, I'm working from the inside of the garment again, the inside of that armhole. I don't really need to because I'm able to use my fingers to just kind of make a nice fold there. But again, if you're feeling not so confident with your skills, then feel free to go press this to the inside. I'm just going to work my way around here. All the way around both armholes. So once I've got those armholes done, I bring it back over to the iron. You're here again, and you're pressing in that hem. You know, you already pressed it once. This is just like, again, to settle those stitches. And then I will take a minute here and give a really nice press down the armhole. You know, sometimes because I am stretching the bias just a tad, you can get some little gather looking situation. Don't be worried, because a lot of that will press out. As long as you don't actually have a pucker or gather, it usually will press out here. And the reason it's doing that is that as you stretch it, it's bringing it in a little bit. And so pressing it with the iron just flattens it all back in. Even if you steam it, if you hit it with some steam, then it actually kind of brings it in, which is a really nice little thing to do on this armhole. So the iron is your friend. And there you go. You made a dress. Here's Libby in hers. And let's see it from the front. So cute in the storefront, rite of passage. And yeah, hope you guys love this dress.